What's the difference between lifeless life and deathless death? I started my first ever quarter of college this year, and the first class I chose was What Think You of Falling in Love? The reason I chose it was so I could analyze the romance in this work of fiction better. While it started as me just wanting to be able to dissect the romance between two different characters, I soon learned that at the core of this novel, everything is about love. Not romantic or platonic, but a much grander, greater, greedier love. The love of humanity, the love of life itself. Gongja, the main character of this story, starts out a complete loser. He starts off the novel repeating the phrase, "I want to be like the Flame Emperor too," over and over. In fact, he even thinks the Flame Emperor is the main character of the world he lives in. He's very parasocial to a nauseating degree. The first love Gongja must learn is the love for himself, and the world gives him an opportunity to do so. The world gives him the ability, "I want to become like you," which when you die by someone else's hand, it lets you copy a skill they have at random. While it does function to instill despair, it has more meaning than just that. What it's trying to convey is the idea that when you are no longer yourself, you are no better than dead. Despite death being commonly seen as the opposite of love in everything from Greek mythology and the functions of Eros and Thanatos, the author bell hooks, echoing that anyone who does not know love is still in death. Death in this story works a little different. The story has a setting that's seen in a lot of different web novels. A world just like ours, but a tower appeared one day, able to be seen by everyone across the world. The inside of the tower is filled with otherworldly monsters, people get powers, yada yada yada. Let's get back to the story. After Gongja drunkenly complains to some random guy about his skill, he finds himself passed out next to an alley where the Flame Emperor and the Saint are having a chat. The Flame Emperor poisoned her drink with what she was going to poison him with. Then the Flame Emperor snaps and burns her alive while holding her by the neck. When Gongja tries to make his escape, the Flame Emperor notices him. Gongja is helpless as the Flame Emperor continues to threaten him. Then Gongja has a realization. This world was entranced by this guy? But somehow, Gongja is able to convince the Flame Emperor that he isn't a threat. But he gets killed anyways. The next thing we know, he's in an abyss and dead. Skill cards fly around him, and through the luck of the draw, he's able to get the one gold skill card that the Flame Emperor had, which brings him 24 hours back in time every time he dies. Through this power, the story transforms the relation between death and love completely. In this story, death is an act of love. The day repeats, and Gongja knows what he must do. So he dies, and he runs into a mass of flames, which is symbolism that has multiple meanings. Gongja dying to the flames is obviously an echo about what happened last death, to show that the Flame Emperor probably started this fire as well. Though that isn't all. Into the fire is an idiom that means to leave a bad situation for one that's even more difficult and strenuous. Through this image right here, it's foreshadowing something in the future while still showing an image of a man running straight into danger to save people. While him running alone into the fire might not be a fight, this is still him charging into battle to save those around him. He does a little research when he's alive again and learns the day the Flame Emperor got this ability was 11 years ago on June 7th. So all he has to do is kill himself 4,050 times, stabbing himself in the chest, waking up the day prior, and stabbing himself again over and over until he stabs himself one last time. This is what I meant by death is an act of love. Not just his own self-love, because this self-sacrifice isn't exactly that. He doesn't love himself because he's finally feeling important. He loves himself because he learned he can finally help others. His own self-sacrifice and love for others spurs on the love for himself. He has to love humanity for this story to even work, because if he doesn't love humanity, he can't love himself. This is what proves him to be the direct antithesis to the Flame Emperor. But he died 30 more times than he planned to. due to the obvious of how hard it is to kill yourself that many times. When we see the younger Flame Emperor, though, we see almost exactly what we saw with Gongja at the beginning. From calling his life as a hunter miserable to complaining about how someone else is so much more powerful and even wishing for a gold skill card to appear just like him. But he was still the same Flame Emperor, a genuine piece of shit. He wasn't changed by the skill. Then the Flame Emperor tries to kill him once more, but Gongja is able to end his life this time. Then, to celebrate, he goes out for a drink, where he meets the Sword Saint. Obviously, Gongja tries to dig up some info about him, but really all he finds is that he talks to people that aren't there and he loves his grandchildren, which is, normal grandpa behavior as far as I'm concerned. Then Gongja stalks the old man, who leads him out to a field in the middle of nowhere, and then confronts him. He thinks that Gongja is a first-rate assassin. So obviously, the smart thing to do is, while unarmed, walk towards the strong man with the sword, saying things like, "How could you think that?" Which, dude, could you get more suspicious? The Sword Saint reveals he has a skill that lets him see how many humans people have murdered. Gongja says he has a good reason to have killed one person, and the Sword Saint says, "Cut the bullshit, it says 4091 above your head." Then kills him. We once again see two views on love which aren't compatible. They both kill to protect, but in very, very different ways. While Gongja sacrifices himself to love, the Sword Saint kills those he sees as threatening his love. Whether it's him protecting his grandchildren with a beheading or protecting himself to give more love to the ones he loves. While this isn't a polar opposite like with what we see with Gongja and the Flame Emperor, it's still a divide of ideals. Gongja shows love by sacrificing himself, and the Sword Saint shows love by killing others. Something important to understand from this, though, is that the Sword Saint is still a just and good person. Killing others as a form of love is not inherently bad. Then Gongja woke up and heard a voice and understood why the old man talked to himself. The Sword Emperor is one of the most important forces in this novel, mainly because when all you do is die, you need someone to share that with. Also, comedic relief, because being able to tell someone what you've gone through, and not only that, someone who can see every difficulty you will go through, is extremely valuable, especially when you're in a spot that leaves you vulnerable to being lonely. The Sword Emperor ascertains that Gongja has a talent no one else could compare to him with, and that is his lack of fear of death. Him not fearing death tells us more than just we'll see a training montage. It tells us that he is not afraid of love either. Killing himself all that time opened up his heart significantly. This is his talent. His love is something that no one else can do. When the Sword Emperor asks what went through his brain when he was killed by the Sword Saint, Gongja says, "I thought it was beautiful." We catch back up at the end of chapter 13, where Gongja is on his first attempt to clear the 10th floor. It's a mansion filled with creepy dolls who ask Gongja to play a game with them, to which a fire erupts and Gongja accepts. The goal of this floor is to find the only real doll and destroy it. But with the raging fire, Gongja is only able to survive a few minutes before dying once again. Though an ability he gets through this makes him immune to the fire. But that's not what's important with the acquisition of this ability. The important thing is the penalty, which forces him to view the trauma of what killed him. An orphan walking up to as many houses as she could, looking for food to not starve. Rejection after rejection, she finally found someone who said they would help. He said he was a doctor, and that he helped orphans like her before, in his mansion. Not only this, but he would nurse her back to health. So she was taken in and locked in a cage. She and many other children were lured into this house and tortured and sacrificed to fulfill the will of a cult. Then we finally see Gongja again. And it's explained by the Sword Emperor that not all enemies they have to defeat are monsters, and that all of what he has seen so far has really happened. Then someone drops a candle, and all the servants and master of the mansion run outside to escape, leaving the little girl to immolate while trapped in a cage all alone.
The kids didn't do anything wrong. They didn't want to starve. They wanted to play with their friends. So Gongja does what his heart tells him to do, and he goes back to the 10th floor, not filled with conquest, but instead with love. Not with the will to beat the boss, but instead he wants to love and cherish it how it wasn't when it was alive.
But as he's about to re-enter the mansion, he comes to a realization. And when the Sword Emperor asks him what he's on about, he explains that the gold skill card he had seen, the one that said, "No one can escape this hell without your permission," that last part meant that the only reason other people have survived this floor was because they were let out. And they were allowed to fail because of that stipulation. They were able to be freed by the will of the dolls. So Gongja shows his love and plays with them. Not the dolls, but the children who died there.
Mister, you're not burning. Isn't it hot? Then can you play with us?
Yes, hide and seek it is. Be careful, everyone. I never lost a round of hide and seek when I was little. I'll start counting.
Hide! Everyone hide!
Run and hide well.
Run far away. Run so that he can never find us. Don't be caught by Mister.
Okay, I'm gonna start.
I found you. Wrong. It's not me.
Huh. Then is it you?
Nope, that's not me.
It has to be you.
Nope, not me.
This is harder than I thought. Then is it you?
Nope, it's not me.
Gongja plays with all the kids, and he keeps playing until he finds all but one of them. And we see the girl in the cage all alone. She asks if he'll play with them, and he says, "I caught you. It's your turn now."
Kind Mister. Thank you.
And with that, he finishes the 10th floor.
I can't begin to convey the emotion I felt. And I didn't want to diminish the emotional impact of this either. One of his biggest strengths is the ability to turn people's trauma into his own. Not only is this an extension of his love for life, but it's also how he loves and honors death with life. Not only that, but this is a callback directly to chapter 3, where he ran into those flames with no hesitation, for the express reason to love. This sequence is able to be heartwarming and heartbreaking all at once. This is how he loves thy enemy, but also how he learns to love more. Only through this trauma he experienced does he gain the empathy and power to make this happen. Not only that, but he definitely knew where the doll was. I mean, we all saw it in the trauma. You probably guessed where it was as well. But he still went back and played with every single one of the children. But that doesn't even begin to explore the depths of his love for life itself. As much as you cannot understand the bottomless malice of the human heart may reign true, it's only like that because of love, which is what I'll go over in the next act. The idea ties itself back to the Sword Saint initially, how malice can be an act of love for life itself. Even the quote, which is from Hunter x Hunter, is used in a loving sense. The character who says this is defending the world from basically a mankind-ending event. We pick back up with the Sword Saint attacking Gongja. They had just cleared the 11th floor, and the top 10 performers were taken to the 12th floor early. After swords clash, Gongja is able to change the conversation from swords exchanging blows to words spoken. The Paladin reveals she has an ability that lets her detect lies from anyone, which lets the Sword Saint interrogate Gongja. The Sword Saint immediately asks the most pressing issue. "You've murdered over 4,000 people. Is that true?" To which Gongja replies, "Yes," which is a lie. Then the Sword Saint accuses him of being an elite assassin, which Gongja readily admits once again, but it's a lie once again. Then the Sword Saint accuses the Paladin of lying, to which the Paladin simply says he's going back on his word. Then through another question from the Sword Saint, Gongja reveals that he killed exactly one person, and the bastard really deserved it. That the man was actually a mass murderer, and all of this is truth. Then Gongja asks for an apology, to which the Sword Saint gives a heartfelt apology. He killed according to his own beliefs, and through this, Gongja saves who knows how many. Then Gongja does another major act of love that clears the malice within the Sword Saint's heart completely. Any and all hatred disappears in an instant. I don't like harping on it, but the way love and hate intertwine in this part of the story is really interesting, not to mention the sincerity of it. The Sword Saint approaches his ideals initially with a very sincere hate, but when his love and ideals are challenged, he becomes defensive, which makes sense because anyone would want to defend the way they love. When the Sword Saint says he will do anything, Gongja asks for him to please teach him the sword. But Gongja restarts his response. To be honest, I could forgive you without any payment. However, I would feel embarrassed. The act of love here is one that once reflects upon the love of humanity, not from death or anything of the such, but instead the bottomless love of humanity. While this may seem as just forgiveness, it has several important differences. Forgiveness does not simply change one's heart. Truly, this is more important for the contrast it has with the next antagonist that is fought. The contrast of two people who killed for love in two very different ways. One killed to defend their love, and the other killed when their love was taken away from them. Then, after skipping a little bit of the story, we reached the first time Gongja starts his crusade against the King of Autumn Rain. His plan is to fight it head on immediately. To fight it nearly alone. When a character asks him if he's planning to die, his response is, "I plan on winning." And so begins the first fight against the King of Autumn Rain. He breaks through wave after wave of enemy on a straight path to the King of Autumn Rain, and their first fight ends as you'd expect, with Gongja dying, but on purpose. He copies a skill that the King of Autumn Rain has, which lets him raise the ones he has murdered as monsters. This ability lets others learn his love the same way he did. Not only is his fight a love for humanity, but symbolically, this is where the tides turn. When people from the outside finally see how hard he's working for them, there is more to it. Most of the ones he's murdered were himself, which means people can see the effort. This is when the greater public sees him as their hero. This is when they start knowingly experiencing his love. They might not know all the struggle he went through directly, but they can feel how hard he's trying through his actions. This is how grand his love is. If we remember how the abilities of the dolls had a correlation to the backstory, we can assume that the same is for the King of Autumn Rain, which means the King of Autumn Rain has a much deeper character than we could imagine, even before seeing his trauma. What it means is that this ability used by the King of Autumn Rain was also used to show love. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but through the ability itself, we can assume that he breathed new life into things he killed. Then Gongja experiences the trauma. But it isn't shown to us, the reader, but we can obviously see it affected Gongja deeply. This is where I tell you to read the novel or the manhwa. I am going to skip over a lot of chapters, and there's a lot of deep and interesting meaning in these chapters, but they just don't relate to this video's topic. We're back to the 11th floor as the entire battle resets. Not a King of Autumn Rain in sight. Just subjugate the enemies. This time, though, he teams up with the Black Dragon, showing her the minimap and trying to end this battle as soon as possible. He finishes the floor in less than an hour. Not only that, there were less than 50 casualties. This is just at the start of his love. When they teleport to the room, which had caused chaos before, he tells him to stay in the room for 5 days, not doing anything, because he's going to clear the 20th floor all on his own across the next 5 days. Then he runs the fight against the King of Autumn Rain back, and the eternal 5 days start. We see a glimpse of the King of Autumn Rain's trauma. It was raining when it first opened its eyes. Then it consumed the frog in front of it and became the frog. Creation and destruction are turned on their heads, along with death and life. Kill to live, or maybe it's killing to love. That was the very first action it took. At that moment, it decided it wanted to live a bit more. Gongja died again and again, each time progressing little by little in the fight against the King of Autumn Rain till the deaths were in the hundreds. Each death brought more progress, yet defeat. Soon, the amount that had died on the first floor went down to 40, then less than 30, and in a clear less than 50 minutes, then less than 10 dead, until every single person lived. Not a single person died. Hundreds of deaths that saved the lives of others. Interestingly, the ability he copied from the King of Autumn Rain is the opposite. In fact, the very first action the King of Autumn Rain takes is directly antithetical to his actions. The King of Autumn Rain has an attack blocked by the Black Dragon, who is simply too antsy to stay in the royal chambers, while Gongja takes his own death to create life for others. The King of Autumn Rain uses the ability 100 Ghost Summoning, to which Gongja uses the same ability. This is to show the readers something symbolic. That is to say, regardless, both of them created life. One through the death of others, and one through the sacrifice of himself. When stripped down to just the bare ideals, it's the ends justify the means versus by any means necessary. This battle is not a battle over life itself because they can both produce it. This battle is over death. As the King of Autumn Rain grew larger and larger, killing and becoming new animals, it found prey it hadn't seen before, a human. As it ate and it gained the memories of the girl it killed. Her father came rushing, and Esther became the first name of the King of Autumn Rain. As the battle between Gongja and the King of Autumn Rain rages, Gongja gains a title befitting of him, given to him directly by the tower, a name that immediately signals his victory. The King of Death. Esther grew older, becoming more and more beautiful. She enchanted the people around her. This King of Autumn Rain was a saintess. People worshipped her, and she acted as a healer. People would give her their sick loved ones, and she would cure them by consuming them and making them anew. A common theme in many science fiction and fantasy stories is the idea of eternal life. From recent stories like Arcane to older ones like the Epic of Gilgamesh, though the most important part of the theming in these is that the pursuit for eternal life is really human. I mean, every single human wishes sickness and death weren't such a big problem in our lives. Though the achievement of achieving eternal life makes it inhuman. Not only that, but death is one of the most important things that does make us human. And Esther is just like this weird amalgamation of all these ideas just stuffed into one girl. She was born with the ability to create the eternal life, which starts her out inhuman, but she literally becomes a human by inheriting the body and memories of a girl and living through many years of her life. But her actions as a saintess are inhuman. While the reasons are as human as can be, the Empire accused her of being a witch. Her town was burned down. Disgusting vermin! How dare thou treat thine fellow humans no better than beasts? Be swallowed up in thy own malice. Only then did she fully become human, as the world recognized the bottomless malice of the human heart. The King of Autumn Rain was no more than a queen of the people. Her entire fight, her killing, was the most human thing she could have done, because there is no beast that kills like man does. She will kill kingdoms if she has to. That is the bottomless malice of the human heart. Though cheesy as it may be, there is one way to conquer this malice, and that's through a deep appreciation of the human condition. someone who knows what she went through and can understand the struggle.
Gongja keeps fighting and dying, fighting and dying, fighting and dying, fighting and... The King of Autumn Rain retreats.
He rewrote history.
I kept my promise. I have not a shroud of shame, nor any regrets. I am proud. I did it.
This is where he realizes the love he has for himself. Hell, he even says,
"What am I supposed to do about it? I just really love myself today." While earlier we saw it exemplified, he himself did not know it. This moment is a buildup of everything we have seen since earlier. From loving thy enemy and the hate he felt from the King of Autumn Rain, the malice he felt towards the Flame Emperor was the reason his love was shown. Gongja slowly but surely pushes back the King of Autumn Rain. Each floor, she gets weaker and weaker until she's pushed back to where the tragedy happened.
The villagers are still alive. There's no fire in sight. Esther is there on the ground, and Gongja points his sword at her. Her words in response are simply,
"This is my village. Doth not darest ruin my paradise."
"The sky was blue. The rain will not fall today."
They begin to fight, and it is clear that Gongja has the upper hand. In fact, Esther didn't even stand a chance. Gongja keeps swinging his sword till the King of Autumn Rain is no more, and it's just Esther. When she says she was a victim clear of blame, Gongja calls her out about what she did to the original Esther. She swallowed innocence and wore the mask of a savior, while breaking the trust of all those around her. Then she says she wouldn't have killed Esther if she had memories, if she knew what it meant. She made a mistake because she didn't know any better. Isn't that what humans do? So he returns her karma and kills her. But not before changing his ability to allow the dead he raises to take on the appearance and memories of those who he kills. So he does what she did. He's gonna swallow her up and spit her back out. Gongja shows her the most ultimate malice he can. His mercy. He chooses a new name for her, Preta, which means hungry ghost.
Which means I can finally reveal the big twist. The name of this novel is not SSS Class Suicide Hunter or SSS Class Revival Hunter either. It's The Hunter Who Dies to Live. What Deathless Death is has been answered. Deathless Death is the indomitable human spirit. Deathless Death is the unwavering love of man. Deathless Death is life. Deathless Death is Gongja. Though Lifeless Life is not as simple. Even though we've already seen it, Gongja really has no idea what his love truly is. There are things he can't even begin to appreciate because he has yet to experience them. This next arc allows us to conclude what Lifeless Life is, but it also tells us more about how Gongja learns to love. He learns... I'm going to have to cover this act a little bit differently than the previous few. The main reason for this, more than there just being a lot of moving parts, is that there are a lot of really interesting ideas and themes that are brought up, but they aren't really relevant to this video. For example, the way motifs and ideas are brought from previous arcs and then shown in the next. Let me give you a couple examples. First, the idea of flames and how it interacted with the world, and how Gongja went from hating the owner of the flame to loving them, which was the hate for the Flame Emperor and the love for the dolls. Then it carries this idea of loving the enemy by being merciful to the very next arc with Esther and Preta. The main issue is there are so many ideas that are brought from the last arc to this one. So before covering this arc, I need to tell you that I will be skipping over a lot, and I mean a lot of content in order to be able to talk about the themes that are relevant in this video, such as the answer to the question I asked at the start of it. But to do that, I need to give a very brief overview. The next floors of the tower are decided by the hunters. They choose doomed worlds to go in and save, which obviously easier said than done. But the first world chosen is a Murim world covered in snow. The reason the world was ended was a zombie apocalypse. The last surviving humans are the strongest in their world, and they're the leaders of the orthodox and demonic sects. The first idea that's brought from the previous arc is life through death and how it relates to the sect leaders directly. This idea is drawn from Preta in the previous arc, though it transforms it in a really intriguing way. Firstly, the life through death that's shown isn't created by the hands of the sect leaders. This is very important, as what this essentially says is that they do have a lot of love for their people, one that ultimately does keep them alive, but not in the same way as Preta. Preta keeps them emotionally and physically intelligent and alive while stripping them of humanity. The sect leaders do not do the same, which allows me to catch up to the next important part of the story. The part of the story which creates conflict in the first place. Gongja, through reasoning, is able to find out that both of the sect leaders are in fact infected by the zombie virus. In order to keep themselves from being taken over by the zombie virus, they paralyze themselves from the neck down and have to move all of their body with ki. When Gongja asks them how they've been able to hold on for so long, especially considering how hard it is to move your every blood, breath, and muscle with ki, the sect leaders take him on a walk and tell him a story. The story is about a martial arts master that reached a level of perfect poison immunity and indestructible skin, so no sword could pierce his flesh and no poison could have any effect. He was essentially... However, no ancient tale would allow a man to be invincible. So he died in the way he didn't train against. He died to lust. Though what this story is really about, other than don't lose yourself to lust, is simple. People who start their journey on the road of martial arts often mistake that it is to be invincible and that the end goal is to have eternal life. This conception is wrong. When choosing what path you go down, you aren't choosing a way to live, but instead you're sealing your fate and deciding the way you'll die. This lesson, both the readers and Gongja are taught, is very, very important. First, when we look at the story, we can clearly see this is a reflection of the Flame Emperor and Gongja, but in very different ways. First, the Flame Emperor. It sealed the way he died in multiple ways. For one, getting the ability to die as many times as you want seals you to a fate of death. Second, his final death is brought upon in a very similar way. He was able to die because of someone with the same ability. The one thing he could not be invincible to is death, and thus death ultimately killed him. Gongja is the king of death after all. Gongja only really has to worry about the first part of the functions, but in a slightly different way. This is mainly because he dies to live, which isn't the same way the Flame Emperor lived. Gongja ultimately will not fall to death, not only as he is the king of it, but it is what keeps him alive. The lesson is what is the most important thing here though. The idea those closest to invincibility choose how to die. This is the exact situation that both the sect leaders are in. They are the most powerful in the world, which means the fights they engage in are their ways of choosing how to die. They want to fight for their people and honor the lives of their comrades with death. Though they do not get to choose this, as very soon after, the Orthodox leader breaks the promise he made with the heavenly demon, and he can no longer move. He ran out of ki. So, to this, the heavenly demon obviously gets upset, especially by the Orthodox leader's ask to die by her hand. She asks if she will end his life if he declares there is no more art in martial arts. Essentially, she asks if he'll admit that chivalry and honor are both dead, to which he apologizes as he cannot say it. To which she remarks that even if he were to die right now, it would not really be dying. Then asks about the difference between lifeless life and deathless death, and says she cannot see any difference. This finally allows us to answer the question of the difference between lifeless life and deathless death. Lifeless life is what the sect leaders are experiencing right now. Lifeless life is being invincible, but being forced to choose how to die. Lifeless life is honoring life with death. Lifeless life is a misguided love. Lifeless life is a sick perversion of Preta's power that these zombies embody. It's not a love for life, but instead a love for death. A love for those not truly alive, but the memory of their life. They show their ultimate love of death when it can't be appreciated anymore. Lifeless life is living to die, and deathless death is dying to live. The difference between them is so small yet incredibly vast. It's the way one lives their life. It's living to have a great end, dying how you want to, or making the most of your life itself, and not caring about the way you die because you lived your life to the fullest. Which ultimately loops back to the idea of loving humanity. You cannot love humanity if you don't love the act of living more than death. Then, a few days later, the heavenly demon returns and kills the Orthodox sect leader. This drives her mad, and she ends up killing Gongja and forcing him to experience her trauma. This trauma has two important points. First is that the start of this trauma shows why I was in the snow. This is where the story of her lifeless life begins, and it's where I decided to start the video as well, because that's where Gongja started too. The second important point is the idea of the strongest poison. If you have every toxin inside the same bowl, only the strongest poison will come out, increased by the strength of the other poisons that died out. This is the situation Bei Qiang finds herself in as a child. This is what initially sets her up for her lifeless life. After all, becoming immune to poison does nothing but decrease the ways you can die. Then Gongja goes back in time and asks to become Bei Qiang's disciple. The way the demonic sect fights is by clawing back at the world that mistreated them. So Gongja must do the same, and he must learn the struggle. The first task given to him by Bei Qiang is to kill a rising star of the clan using only the power of hunger. Unfortunately, Gongja fails, not knowing hunger, and he dies to the rising star and experiences his trauma, which gives him a better understanding of hunger, but he still does not know its essence, so he starves himself. The first few days of starvation are hard, but after there is no more struggle. So he begins to strike while feeling that hunger. This is the first step of the struggle. He swings and swings his sword while consumed by hunger, though he still had yet to understand the full depth. So he asks his ghoul summoning to bring back 112 bodies that died of hunger. One body for each day the one who killed him was kept starving. So he keeps striking and keeps experiencing trauma over and over until he understands part of the struggle, hunger. He knows what hunger is now. It's the children baking mud cookies under the sun, with soil made with a little gravel and no sand. Next is thirst. After that, drowning, freezing, and poison. The next two are illness and blunt force. These are difficult because of how unanimous the feeling is, but how undiscovered the struggle is. Illness isn't tied to struggle, but instead to bliss. When you're sick, you easily remember the people who took care of you and helped you out when you were down. Blunt force is complex in a different way. The punch is the most basic form of fighting, but how does that boil down to a struggle? Regardless, Gongja grows to understand them and understand their struggles until we get to the second to last struggle, incineration, something far too familiar to him, which he masters fairly quickly until he has to conquer the final struggle, suicide, which is the easiest despite being saved for last. This is how he learns to love the struggle and harness it. His struggle, the one of suicide, is how he understands all other struggles. He quite literally turns other people's trauma into his own strength. Through his death, from the beginning, he was using others' trauma as his own strength, even when it came to killing the Flame Emperor. The trauma of the people he didn't need to see because they were his own as well. That is the love of humanity from the start of the story. That is how he learns to love and appreciate the struggle. But there's still one struggle he does not know of. We learn about it at the end of this arc, with a lot of other things happening as well, but I don't want to spoil it because you should read this for yourself. But we learn he doesn't know how to love. But you've been proving it this entire time. Shut up. The kind of love that he doesn't understand is one that could kill a man impenetrable by steel, a man who couldn't die at the deadliest poison. He learns how to love. The next Doomed World is of the fantasy romance genre. He enters it with the Heretic Inquisitor, and the first thing that happens is that the Heretic Inquisitor gets slapped by Raviel Evanzia. This fantasy romance story's villainous. Then they get sent down to a dungeon where they first learn about one of the challenges they'll have to face. That challenge is a synchronization bar. Through different events, they become more and less synchronized with their characters, and if it reaches 100%, they lose themselves completely and become the character they took over. Though, while speaking of their predicament, they get ambushed by a group of kidnappers. They make quick work of them and start interrogating. Gongja, through his awesome romance powers, learns they were hired to kidnap the girl and that they knew that they would be in this cellar. Gongja is able to deduce the culprit, and it's not Raviel, considering she never told the guards which cell to throw them in. And our culprit appears. The Crown Prince. The prince indulges in insulting Gongja, which causes the first incident where Gongja synchronizes with his character, but he's able to gain control before he synchronizes too much, only 3% gained, while deciding on a safe word of sorts to help them remember their goal. Raviel approaches them. This causes the sync rate to rise and an argument to start, but Gongja somehow saves them and allows them to take their leave. Once returned to the dorm, they create a phrase to snap them each out of the sync. When spring comes, magnolias wither. He learns something as simple as making tea can cause the sync. The next large event is something Raviel starts. She brings the prince, the Heretic Inquisitor, and Gongja down to her dungeon, where she is the 3 people who perpetrated the attack the night before held. This is important because this is where Gongja first wishes to understand Raviel. This is the spark of their romance. Even though right now she's in love with the Crown Prince, she asks the Crown Prince to execute these people who tried to kidnap the Heretic Inquisitor, though his denial to do so is not only an admission of guilt, but also an act of love for the Heretic Inquisitor. Another rule she adds to killing the kidnappers is to hurt her. Cut her up for not keeping his love safe. It's awful. Raviel is truly manipulated by the whims of love. He can't even directly kill them. He has to order others to do it for him, though Gongja forces him to kill one by holding his hands and swinging it for him. Love in this arc is a lot more literal and romantic, though there still ties constantly back to stuff earlier in other arcs, but I don't have the time to talk about them. So instead, I'm going to skip forward to when Raviel and Gongja meet up again. This is where they learn of each other's secrets and where we learn that this love was meant to be. Raviel knows that they aren't the characters they've been put into and knows they're from an outside world, though she has different preconceived notions about what they know exactly. The truth is, Gongja knows nothing about her and isn't trying to kill her either. Then Raviel reveals she has the power to return back in time a week every single time she dies. She even mentions how he sees humans as human. Gongja calls for the broadcast of the floor to be cut off for a short while and tells Raviel he is the same. He goes back in time every time he dies, but only 24 hours. He tells her that he wants to learn more about her and that the reason he came to this world was to learn about love. He wants to learn about things he doesn't understand, and he feels like he wouldn't fully live his life without knowing it. He wants to learn about love from the world. Not her exactly, but he knows that she probably understands love better than anyone else in this world. He wants to understand how she can act like she does. Because if that's because of love, then I'd also like to experience that kind of emotion like you do. He reveals how he relives his killer's trauma so he can understand people's hearts even just a little bit more easily than most people. He's finally able to tell someone about his own story. She likes his answers and his motives, so she decides to teach him about love. With the exception, he has to be her servant alone. He accepts. Let me give you a quick rundown. Hi, final editor Katie here. I was supposed to have a skit recorded for this, but I ended up not having time, unfortunately. So I'm gonna have to explain it. Bye. Lesson 1 is that love starts at the place you experience a mean bitch. There's obviously the chance that they are perfectly perfect, but there is a 99% chance she will be able to be mean at some point. It's impossible for a human to be nice all the time. Though, please do remember, you are also a mean bastard. Don't be too offended. Humans learn from experience. Humans make promises and forget those promises, so you have to learn to remember. And, I mean, she does have a point. She's in love with the meanest man in the world. If you can't avoid meeting a mean person, learn to enjoy it. You'll probably love someone eventually, and you'll meet a mean person as your first love, so you should enjoy it. And finally, you must become a meaner person than the one you'll meet. Dating a person is basically war after all. You can't be nice to a mean person. Gongja admits he thought love would be a lot different, but it's not easy meeting someone who causes your heart to flutter at first sight, though Raviel gives him a chance to make her heart flutter. He breaks his outs given to help him in this world, though what this ends up doing is makes him fall in love with her. Then we see one of my favorite panels in the entire story. What do you think love is? This motherfucker's down bad. Though I haven't had a chance to dissect how this all ties in and elaborate on it. So let's go back through and do that really quick. One of the most important themes in this story is any and all acts of service done by Gongja increases his sync level. While this makes sense as he has taken over the role of a butler, but it has another role as well. His acts of service are more than just acts of service. They are all love in one way or another. Not all the romantic kind, but instead a mix. The more love he gives and feels, the more he loses himself. Which reminds me of how Rilke interpreted romantic love. One part of his view was that basically the closer you are to another person, the more of yourself you lose. But the reason the other loves you comes from the part of you that you're losing. So it has to be a balance of distance and closeness, which takes time and experience to master. This also ties into something we saw last arc about how warriors who train to become invincible will die by something they didn't train against. How this love could make him lose himself. Once he does lose himself, he dies for real. His immersion won't change if he goes back in time because that sync is a part of him. Him learning to love is literally the most dangerous thing he's done so far. This is also the first time we see him literally say he wants to learn to love. This is the first time he is learning, but not through others, not through trauma, not through death. Somehow his biggest struggle yet is something he has to work through without powers. He is just like all who faced him, powerless against love. Raviel takes him somewhere in the middle of the night and asks him what he's thinking, and he responds he's been thinking about holding her hand. Then temptation starts to take over his mind. She makes him lose more and more of himself. He even thinks to himself that he doesn't know anything. What he doesn't know about, though, is love. Meaning this act from Raviel isn't love, but instead something less wholesome. She tempts him to call her his master. As he's about to fall for this trap, he remembers what Beiqiang said about the invincible and how she is his true master. Losing himself to this love would have made him become her servant, so he tells her that he wants to learn love without losing himself, which reflects exactly what we have seen in the story so far. His actual growth of love hasn't been from when his sync goes up, but instead when it doesn't. In fact, being taught the rules of love didn't make him lose himself even one bit. So instead, he proposes that if she accepts him as her master, he will do the same. Because if he gives his heart to her, how will his blood continue to flow? This is another growth of love and understanding it. Love cannot be one-sided. It has to be a reciprocal relationship. After this, she shows him how her death loop started, with a blade. This sword would grant a wish for the holder, but when making the wish, they must pierce their own heart. She wished for her love to become eternal, which is why she can't give him her heart, which ties everything together beautifully. She literally gave her ability to love away to be able to love forever. Though the wish wasn't able to make her love with the Crown Prince eternal, it was simply to make her love eternal, which I will expand on later. The sword grows into a beast that resembles the King of Autumn Rain, but he's able to cut it down with the Sword of Immolation, something he could only use through his love for the children who died in that mansion. After they defeat this manifestation, Raviel says she wants her love back, that what she showed him was hideous. But Gongja says that something this small isn't enough to make him disappointed in her, because a truly hideous person would never show their heart to others. He didn't love her because she wasn't hideous, but because he can see what she hates and despises, what hurts and causes pain. They're the same, and they've lived their lives similarly. Both at their lowest points, they were given this ability to loop. Just like how he loves himself, he loves her, and he hopes she'll do the same. All while the sync doesn't increase one bit. When she asks if he'll ever get sick of him because they're both regressors and could spend eternity together, he says that it wouldn't happen because she hasn't gotten sick of the Crown Prince and he's a better man than him. The conversation gets cut off because the heretic inquisitor is pounding at her gate. He completely lost himself to desire, not for love, but for feeling. He has a different arc in the story, but I can't dwell on it. After they are rid of him, Raviel and Gongja talk about their regressions. And Raviel brings up something important. She regresses 10 days and he regresses 1, which means that they aren't even. They are parallel lines that will never cross. But Gongja promises to get her out of the 10-day cycle, to which she calls him arrogant. And as much as I love their lovey-dovey talk afterward, I don't have time to talk about it, unfortunately. So you can go read the web novel or the manhwa, which I've been telling you to do. Go, read it. There is one thing I have to tell you about, though. That one of the most important things that Raviel says is that she's an expert in love, but not being loved. And are those not as important as each other? So she says that after reflection, maybe the Crown Prince was too much of an asshole, and so she won't let that slide. And so Gongja becomes her affair partner, which sucks to be Gongja, but unfortunately he takes what he can get as he sinks more and more with his character. We see him after he's formulated a plan. One he can't tell the Sword Emperor, but tells him to try anything to bring him back to reality if he reaches 99%. Though part of his strategy is making her fall in love, even though it's fake. Right now, he believes he can make it happen. He takes on all her work and duties for the coming days and lets her rest as much as he can. After all, the world ends in a few days, might as well take a vacation. So they spend time together until the world starts to end, and he asks her romantically to die with him. And so, for the first time, he wraps each of them up with his aura and kills them both. But after this happened, he left her alone for 9 days, so he proposes to kill her and himself till they can get back to day 1. To which she says he's awful for killing her more than once, and they kiss and die together again. This continues, kissing and dying. It's the weirdest way to rewrite Romeo and Juliet. Till on the very moment he arrived, instead of seeing the heretic inquisitor slapped, he interlocks lips with his lover. Now they can both experience the first day for eternity. She withdraws from the academy and runs away with Gongja. Then, as they're riding into the sunset, Raviel tells him a rule he must follow. If he betrays her, he must choke her to death with his own 2 hands, not aura or anything else. She wants him to kill her like this over and over again until she disappears from the world. He also is not allowed to kill himself without her permission. They are each other's lover now, after all. All Gongja asks in return is for her to trust him when he asks it of her. So his plan to clear the stage how he wants finally starts. He spends the day with her, and as they cuddle next to each other before sleep, he mentions his immersion went up. So Raviel learns of it the first time. But when she asks what happens when it reaches 100, he says she shouldn't concern herself. He's in the high 70s right now. It'll be a while till that point is reached. They spend time together until Gongja tells her that he's going to raise his immersion to the 90s, and maybe even completely become the butler, which is why he asks her to trust him. They return to the first day, and he requests to be tied to a chair so he is unable to move. And it's not because he's freaky, okay? I swear to God. Then he asks for a mirror to be brought, then for him to be kissed nonstop so he can like her even more, so he can give in to desire. He tells her once his immersion rate passes 90 and starts reaching 100 to kill him, which ties back to the very beginning and the killing of the kidnappers in such a beautiful way. Not only that, but the only way they can love forever is for him to lose himself just once. Then he does something I cannot say, so you gotta figure it out for yourself. He is killed by her and sent back 24 hours with 99% synchronization. He awakes someone unfamiliar in front of him. He walks and walks, memories barely surfacing through all the useless noise in his mind. He wanders till he reaches Lady Raviel out of instinct. Almost. They meet, but Gongja isn't there. It's like a dream, bits and pieces unable to be recounted, but he remembers Raviel looking at him with tears. Then Raviel chokes him. He forgot Gongja lost himself. Then, as he dies, he recounts the trauma of the one who killed him. It was the grief Raviel experienced because of Gongja, which brings him back. He awakes crying, which continues the loop over and over and over. Each time she has to kill the one she loves most, not out of hatred, but paradoxically out of love. We see the inverse of what the Sword Saint killed for. Instead of killing others for his love, she kills the one she loves for love. A weirdly recursive mess of emotion that even reading this for the 5th time, I struggle to fully comprehend. Till finally, Raviel. I have been waiting for you, Gongja. He finally realizes what happened. The danger he put Raviel and himself in. The time they spent together was no longer just a dream. It was no longer his wish to learn how to love. He was able to make his dreams a reality. Everything that built up to this point. The love through trauma, the love through struggle, having to kill your lover over and over again, and having your lover kill you over and over again. Everything led up to this point. And when they meet again, instead of indulging in a kiss, a hug is what warms their hearts. He finally does what he set out to do. Not from the start of this arc, but the start of the novel as a whole. Not become the Flame Emperor, but instead the opposite. He learns how to fight for the people. He learns the struggle of humanity. He embodies the indomitable human spirit. Instead of loving like Raviel and giving up everything to be with your lover, Gongja takes all he can and takes some more. His greed may have literally clouded his judgment, but he still achieved what he wanted. No, I think he achieved what he deserves. He achieved something we all deserve. He learned how to love. Wait, before you go, I have some things I have to tell you. For one, this video would not have been possible without my friends. One of them is trying to make art their living, so if you like commissioning artists, they have some great stuff. It's down in the description. They made my profile picture. 2, thank you so much for making it this far in the video. I have had this video in my head for like over a year in different forms and ways, and I've scrapped so many scripts just to start it all over again. So you making it all the way to the end of the video really means a lot to me. And 3, I will not be able to upload for a very long while. I have college starting back up, and so for the next 9-ish weeks, there will be no uploads coming from me. But I am going to be writing scripts and developing a bunch of new ideas for videos, so you should have videos from me all summer long. Peace.